What's up, everybody? Welcome to number two. So we've obviously established how to build muscle, like what stimulus we need to do. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the exercise selection, so how to get the most out of your training in general, right? Because we know that we want to create a stimulus, so the method of delivering that stimulus is training. So we have to make sure that's okay. So number one, slide two. Why is exercise selection important? So exercise selection is important, and the order could completely change the workout. If you did deadlifts and then squats, you'll wrecked for the rest of the session, which is why we don't do it like that. If you do hamstrings, glutes, quads, and then go squat, you're going to have an impact on that. So it's important to understand how those are affected, which means that you need to understand the desired outcome from the movement. Like, what are you trying to achieve from that movement? This is where it sounds complicated to someone who doesn't get it, but we're going to try and get it. And if you get it already, then you're good. So the question you always want to be asking yourself is: what are you challenging more specifically, rather than just the body part, right? I'm training biceps, yeah, but can you feel the contraction, right? If you combine that with aiming to understand the stimulus to fatigue ratio of a movement, that is ultimately going to be what. So how well do you connect to it? What stimulus comes with it? What fatigue comes with it? What's the goal of the workout? And that is your criteria for deciding selection and whatnot. So what is stimulus to fatigue ratio? So everything has a stimulus. And with that stimulus comes a response, a fatigue response, right? So we got to consider many things when it comes to the stimulus fatigue ratio. Different movements of different muscles, rep ranges, and intensities are all going to have different demands, right? One single leg extension versus a two-leg extension versus a squat. All three of those are going to have different calorie demands and energy demands. So you've got to program accordingly, right? If you programmed an all unilateral session and you do 3 sets on each side, it kind of feels like 6 sets. So you've got to understand that as well. And the goal should always be to maximize the stimulus and minimize the fatigue, right? And sometimes you have to sacrifice some fatigue for that, which is fine, because that's part of training. You have to be tired ultimately because that's what happens. And it's okay sometimes to have those high stimulus exercises that also create high fatigue, but that's where we come to moderation, right? So question your exercise selection, right? These are the questions that you want to ask yourself when you do it, right? So number one, does it fit? Is it a really small machine? Is it wide? I don't know if any of you use the Prime incline press, but it's super, super wide. I don't like it. It hurts my shoulder. Don't know if you guys have ever used Gymleco, but I can't use it. It's too narrow. That's for me personally. So if you just find it's not quite fitting and you've adjusted the seats and you've put the things back right, this is where you need to go into some more specific things like dumbbells, machines, and things that you can manipulate the arms with, right? And then that lines up with does it line up, right? So okay, so you can fit in there, but is this press making you shrug up, or when you pull down, are you internally rotating, right? So it's not lining up. So we've got to make sure we pick an exercise that fits. Now we've got to make sure we pick an exercise that lines up. This is why cables are really good, dumbbells are really good, and obviously a lot of the new machines they're built for this now. So a lot of them are good. Atlantis, Cybex, Prime, all those types of things, or some of the Prime. And then we're going to think, does it line up properly? So, if you think about a wide, I don't know if you can see me too much on that camera, but a pronated lat pull down, we're coming out like this versus a semi-pronated when you're coming down. There's a difference in the lat length there. So we've got to understand, obviously, what's the target? Is it upper back? Is it lower lats? And then let it crumple in. And that's where you start to look at joint and muscle function. What is the actual muscle do, and then we can load it through that. Can you load it properly? So does it have a resistance profile that's favorable? Either it's just the same the whole way, or you get those Smith presses sometimes that you get under and you're like, how the fuck is anyone under this? It's so heavy. You don't want to go on those ones, obviously. And then does the exercise match your abilities, right? So I don't want to give everyone a reverse banded squat press supersetted with some heel raised occluded lunges, but I've done that before with people who have got high muscle mass, right? So just make sure that everything lines up with your abilities when you come to exercise selection. That goes to volume as well. So don't just throw loads of sets because you think more is more. It's not. And then can you progress on it? So you're doing this every single week and you're going up, right? Weight is going up, form is going up, a rep is going up. If you can't, maybe that exercise, you know, make it feels good, it lines up as expected, and you can progress it. If not, and then you change the loading pattern and it still doesn't suit, then potentially you can swap out, for example. So that is pretty much how we like choose exercises, right? So exercise selection plays a huge part in the progress of your physique. Think about it, right? Exercises should be a big consideration. These are some of the tips that you should think about, right? Pick movements that fit your biomechanics. Think about the movement of the muscle when loading the pattern. And again, like I obviously haven't gone into tangibles of like, this is how, well, and we'll do this eventually. I obviously want to launch this like with at least 30, 40 videos, but you can imagine how long these take to write, to film and to get up, obviously. But when I say think about how it works, like if you think about a pec, the pec brings the arm across the body, right? Okay, so you're going to do a pec fly. The pec also pushes things away, downwards and upwards. Okay, so an incline and a decline, right? It doesn't do this, so you wouldn't load something like this, right, for example. Ask yourself if you're able to load it correctly. Is it effective? And then just, you know, how high is that stimulus? So more compound movements are going to be much, much higher stimulus. And then how much does that stimulus carry on? So start to take note of it, right? If you find yourself do a big hack squat set, a big leg press set, and then you've got something else that you're set after it, and you find you're like workout flagging, that might be a sign that you're doing too much of like a high stimulus movement, and maybe you could either swap a high stimulus movement out for a lower one, and engage it like that, for example. So we'll see you in the next recording.